The training field was hot under the morning sun, the kind of heat that baked the dirt into a crust and made sweat bead on foreheads before the real work even began. The academy grounds were alive with movement, shouts of instructors, the metallic clank of weapons being checked, boots hitting the track in perfect rhythm. In the middle of it all stood Alara, a woman who did not look like she belonged in such a brutal place. She was small, her figure almost slight compared to the towering cadets who flexed their shoulders and laughed loudly as though the world was their stage. Her hair was tied back simply, no fancy braids or tight buns, and her clothes were the same rough fatigues as everyone else's, though somehow on her they seemed less intimidating, more humble. She had come here without fanfare, without boasting of her background, without even a whisper of the skills she carried within. To anyone who looked, she was just another trainee, quiet, almost invisible in the crowd of ambitious recruits. But the academy had a way of dragging truth into the open, and Alara's truth would not remain hidden for long. It started the way trouble usually does, with arrogance. 5 cadets, already forming the kind of pack mentality that thrived in places like this, noticed her during drills. She ran with a steady pace, never falling behind but never sprinting to show off either. She handled the obstacle course without complaint, without the grunts and groans that others used as performances for the instructors. She was efficient, economical, and quiet. That quietness was what unsettled them most. To them, silence was weakness, and weakness had no place in their world. They began with sneers, muttered words when she passed. Farm girl. Too soft. Dead weight. She ignored them, her gaze fixed ahead, her breathing calm. That only fueled their irritation. To be ignored by someone they had already judged as beneath them was an insult to their pride. The instructors either did not notice or pretended not to. After all, the academy thrived on competition, and sometimes cruelty was just another tool to test resilience. But the 5 cadets were not satisfied with small barbs. They wanted a reaction. They wanted to break her quiet. That chance came during sparring practice. The ring was crowded with pairs throwing each other to the mat under the barked commands of the drill master. It was supposed to be 2 against 2 rotations, but when Alara's turn came, the 5 arranged it so they faced her together. The drill master, distracted with another group, didn't see the imbalance. To most it would have seemed unfair. To them it was entertainment. Alara stepped into the circle without hesitation, her stance calm, shoulders relaxed, eyes lowered as though she was still that simple woman no one expected much from. One cadet grinned, circling her with exaggerated movements. Another cracked his knuckles. The others whispered between themselves, confident in the outcome. Around the ring, the other recruits noticed the mismatch and began watching with the eager hunger of those waiting for blood. Even in places meant to forge unity, the desire to see someone fall was always strong. And they were certain it would be her. The first lunge came fast, a tall cadet swinging a wide punch meant to stun her quickly. She did not retreat. She stepped forward, closing the distance in a way that looked almost careless, her hand snapping up to redirect his wrist with startling precision. He stumbled past her, momentum betrayed, and before he could regain his footing she drove her elbow into his chest. The sound of breath being stolen from his lungs echoed as he collapsed to the mat. The crowd gasped, but Alara's face remained unchanged. She did not smirk, did not gloat. She turned smoothly as the second came at her, this one attempting a grab to pin her arms. She ducked low, her body folding like water slipping through fingers, and in the same motion she hooked her leg behind his knee and pulled. He crashed down awkwardly, groaning as his face struck the mat. 2 down, and not a single wasted movement from her. The third and fourth came together, realizing this was no simple match anymore. One swung high, the other low, aiming to overwhelm her with combined force. Alara pivoted, letting the high strike slice through empty air as she twisted her torso, catching the low strike on her forearm. Her body spun with the energy rather than resisting it, her momentum whipping her into a controlled strike that slammed her palm into the high attacker's jaw. He staggered, dazed, and she followed through with a knee into his midsection, sending him crumpling. The low attacker barely had time to recover before she swept his legs with a fluid kick, dropping him hard. The mat was filling with groans, the sound of pride shattering faster than bones. Only one remained now, his smirk gone, replaced with the wide-eyed realization that whatever she was not weak. He circled warily, sweat beading on his forehead. She simply watched, her breath steady, her stance unchanged. He roared, trying to summon courage through noise, and charged. She let him come. At the last second she shifted aside, using his momentum against him. Her hand caught his shoulder, guiding him past, and her foot snapped into the back of his leg with brutal precision. He hit the mat face first, the breath driven out of him in a painful grunt. The silence that followed was louder than the noise of all the falls before it. 5 cadets sprawled across the ground, while Alara stood untouched, her expression as calm as when she had entered. She did not raise her fists in triumph. She did not even glance at the watching crowd. She simply stepped back, waiting for the drill master's next command as though nothing extraordinary had happened. The recruits around the ring stared in stunned disbelief, whispers hissing like wind through dry grass. Some looked at her with newfound respect, others with fear, but none could deny what they had just seen. The instructors finally turned, brows furrowing as they realized what had occurred. Yet even they hesitated, caught between discipline and awe. Alara stood in silence, her heart steady, her face unreadable. She had not come here to prove anything to them, but sometimes the truth reveals itself when provoked. They had seen only a simple woman. Now they had seen something else entirely. The rest of that day carried a strange tension that wrapped around the training grounds like an invisible thread. Word of what Alara had done spread faster than wildfire, carried by whispers and incredulous retellings. Some recruits exaggerated the scene, swearing she had moved faster than the eye could follow or that she hadn't even broken a sweat. Others downplayed it, claiming the 5 had been careless, that luck had favored her. But no one could deny the truth. 5 cadets had gone down in less than a minute, and the one who stood afterward was the woman everyone had dismissed as fragile and unremarkable. Alara, however, did not let the murmurs disturb her. She ate quietly, sitting alone at the mess hall table, spooning the bland stew into her mouth with the same calm expression she had worn in the ring. The 5 she had floored sat in the corner, avoiding her gaze, their bruises already beginning to darken. Pride hurt more than flesh, and theirs had been shattered completely. By the following morning, the instructors could no longer ignore her. They called her name during roll call with sharper emphasis, their eyes lingering as though trying to figure out what had been hidden from them. She went through drills with the same quiet diligence, her movements precise, efficient and unshowy. But now every pair of eyes followed her. When she climbed the ropes, cadets compared her time to the fastest among them. When she lifted weights, they counted the reps silently, waiting for her to falter. She never faltered. She didn't outperform in dazzling displays, but her steadiness was unnerving, her consistency relentless. Unlike those who burned hot and faded, she burned steadily, a flame that could not be snuffed. That frightened people more than if she had been a show-off. A firework is spectacular but brief. Alara was something else entirely, something that could not be measured in a single moment. The 5 who had challenged her could not let go of their humiliation. In the barracks, they whispered about her, sometimes angrily, sometimes nervously, as though speaking her name might summon her. One of them, the tallest who had thrown the first punch, vowed to reclaim his honor. "It was a fluke," he muttered, rubbing his chest where the memory of her elbow still lingered. "Next time she won't catch me off guard." The others nodded, but their voices lacked conviction. They had felt her precision, the effortless way she had turned their aggression against them. It was one thing to talk of revenge, it was another to stand before her again. Yet pride is stubborn, and men who thrive on dominance cannot survive long with shame gnawing at them. Alara herself did not think about them. Her mind was focused inward, on her own discipline. Each night, after lights out, when the barracks grew quiet, she would sit on her bunk in stillness, her breathing slow, her posture straight. Some thought she prayed. Others thought she meditated. The truth was that she was revisiting every movement of the day, replaying each drill in her head, searching for inefficiencies, for wasted energy, for ways to refine. She treated every task not as an obligation but as a chance to sharpen. It was not pride that drove her, it was necessity. She carried a past that none of them knew, scars not visible on her skin but etched into her soul. To them, she was a simple woman suddenly revealed as dangerous. To herself, she was only surviving, continuing the discipline that had been her shield long before she arrived here. On the 3rd day after the sparring match, the instructors announced a combat evaluation. It was a grueling exercise designed to test endurance, adaptability, and strategy. Cadets would be thrown into simulated missions, facing each other in mock battles with blunt weapons and padded gear. Everyone buzzed with excitement, though many glanced nervously at Alara. Would she dominate again? Would she crumble under the weight of expectation? The 5 saw this as their chance. If they could best her here, in front of the entire academy and under official conditions, they might reclaim their lost pride. They whispered plans, strategies, promises of payback. Alara heard none of it. She stood silently as the rules were explained, fastening her gear with the same measured calm as always. When the exercise began, the cadets scattered into the wooded training ground, hunting each other in teams. Ilara moved with careful steps, her senses alert but her demeanor calm. She avoided unnecessary fights, conserving her strength, striking only when she must. One by one, those who underestimated her found themselves eliminated, tagged out with swift, precise blows that came before they could react. She did not gloat, did not taunt, she simply dispatched them and moved on. The forest grew quieter as numbers dwindled, until at last she found herself surrounded again by the 5. They had tracked her using the same pack tactics as before. This time there was no crowd, no casual sparring mat. This was their arena, their chance to prove themselves. They circled her, weapons raised, their eyes gleaming with desperation more than confidence. The leader sneered, though his voice wavered. "Let's see you try that again." Ilara's gaze swept over them, calm as ever, her stance loose but ready. She could feel their tension, their need to erase the memory of failure. But need is not strength and desperation is not discipline. She did not wait for them to lunge this time. She moved first, a sudden blur of motion that caught them off guard. Her staff cracked against the leader's wrist, disarming him instantly. A pivot, a sweep, and the second fell. The others rushed, but once again their numbers betrayed them. They got in each other's way, their strikes clumsy compared to her precision. She flowed between them like water, redirecting, striking, dropping them one by one. Within moments, the forest floor was littered with 5 groaning bodies once again, their weapons scattered, their pride shattered further. When the whistle blew to end the round, Ilara stood alone, her chest rising and falling steadily, not with exhaustion but with control. She looked down at them briefly, not in pity, not in triumph, but with the same calm detachment as always. The instructors marked her as victorious, their expressions unreadable. Around the field, other cadets watched with a mixture of awe and unease. Whatever Ilara was, she was not ordinary, and pretending otherwise was no longer possible. The 5 cadets could not walk back to the barracks without feeling the sting of eyes following them. Every whisper in the mess hall, every sideways glance on the training field reminded them of their defeats. Twice they had faced her, twice they had fallen. Pride that once fueled their laughter now curdled into bitterness, and bitterness has a way of turning into something darker. At first they tried to dismiss it, telling themselves that the combat evaluation had been unfair, that Ilara's luck could not last. But late at night, lying awake while bruises pulsed across their bodies, they knew the truth. Luck had nothing to do with it. She was simply better, and that truth gnawed at their insides like worms in rotting wood. Their resentment hardened into something dangerous, a vow that the next time would not be under rules or whistles but on their terms, away from the eyes of instructors. Ilara meanwhile carried on as she always had. She rose before dawn, running laps alone around the field while mist clung to the ground. She ate her meals in silence, practiced drills with unwavering focus, and retired each evening without complaint. Some cadets began to approach her out of curiosity, asking where she had learned to fight, who had trained her, what secrets she held. She answered with the same quiet humility, offering no grand stories, no boasts, only saying she had trained herself to survive. For some, that humility deepened their respect. For others, it made her seem even more mysterious, as though she was guarding a well of knowledge no one else could touch. The instructors watched her closely now, not interfering but noting everything, as though waiting for the right time to test her properly. Tension in the barracks grew sharp as a blade. The 5 whispered more openly now, their voices dripping with venom. They mocked her within earshot, calling her a coward who only won because of tricks. They spread rumors that she had cheated during evaluations, that she had bribed instructors, that her victories were nothing but illusions. Most cadets did not believe it, but lies have a way of seeping into cracks, and doubt began to spread. Ilara did not respond. She let their words pass over her like wind across stone. But silence is not always protection, sometimes it is provocation. To men drowning in shame, her refusal to acknowledge them was salt in their wounds. One evening after lights out, they cornered her outside the barracks. The moon was a thin sliver in the sky, casting long shadows across the training yard. Ilara had been walking alone as she often did, when the 5 stepped from the darkness, blocking her path. Their faces were grim, their eyes hard, their bodies tense with the desperation of men who had decided this would be the night their pride was restored. The leader stepped forward, his voice low and harsh. "You think you're better than us? You think you can humiliate us twice and walk away?" His hand tightened on a wooden training stick he had smuggled from the armory. The others carried their own crude weapons, illegal here at night, but rules meant nothing to men who had lost face. Ilara stopped, her gaze calm as always. "This isn't the way," she said softly. Her voice was not pleading nor mocking, only steady. "You'll destroy yourselves with this." Her words might have carried weight if their shame had not already burned away reason. The leader snarled and swung, the stick slicing through the air toward her head. She moved before the others even registered it, her body folding and flowing in one smooth motion. The stick passed harmlessly overhead as she stepped inside his guard, her palm striking his chest with such precision that he staggered back, gasping for air. The others shouted and charged, weapons raised. The moonlight caught flashes of movement as the fight erupted. Ilara became a blur, weaving between strikes, redirecting their momentum, dropping them one by one with brutal efficiency. A sweep of her leg sent one crashing into the dirt. A twist of her wrist disarmed another, his weapon clattering uselessly to the ground. She struck only where necessary, throats, joints, solar plexus, places that ended fights without spilling blood. Yet even controlled, her blows carried enough force to leave them groaning, writhing in the dust. Within moments, the 5 who had come to ambush her lay scattered again, their pride crushed deeper than ever. She stood over them in silence, her breath calm, her expression unreadable in the pale light. But this time there were witnesses. 2 instructors, returning late from a strategy meeting, had caught the sound of fighting and rushed to the scene. They stopped in stunned silence, taking in the sight of 5 armed cadets sprawled at Ilara's feet. Their eyes flicked from the weapons to her, and for the first time, suspicion hardened in their expressions. One stepped forward, barking for order. "What is the meaning of this?" His voice cracked like a whip in the night. The 5 scrambled to their knees, trying to speak at once, spitting lies about her ambush, her treachery, her hunger for dominance. Ilara did not interrupt. She simply stood with her hands at her sides, her calm composure in stark contrast to their frantic accusations. The instructors silenced them with a raised hand, then turned to her. "Is this true?" one demanded. She shook her head once. "They provoked me. I defended myself. Nothing more." Her words hung in the air, steady and clear, but doubt lingered in the instructor's eyes. To them, the sight of 5 cadets brought low by one woman in the dead of night raised questions that could not be ignored. They ordered all of them back to the barracks under threat of punishment, declaring the matter unresolved until morning. The 5 smirked through their bruises, convinced their lies had found fertile ground. Ilara walked in silence, knowing the real battle was no longer in the ring or the woods but in the perception of those who held authority. That night, as she lay on her bunk staring at the ceiling, she knew this was only the beginning. Skills could silence fists, but envy and pride were enemies that no strike could defeat. She had entered this place seeking only discipline and survival, but now she had been marked. Not just by those 5 but by the instructors themselves. And the weight of unseen eyes was heavier than any blow she had taken. Morning came heavy with tension. The entire academy buzzed with rumors about the midnight fight, and by breakfast every cadet had chosen a side. Some whispered that Ilara was a menace, a woman hiding dangerous secrets, someone who didn't belong among them. Others defended her quietly, saying the 5 had been asking for humiliation from the beginning. But the loudest voices were always the bitter ones, and soon the story twisted in retelling. She had lured them out, she had ambushed them, she had gone too far. The instructors kept their expressions unreadable, but their eyes followed her every movement, and the weight of suspicion pressed against her like chains. Ilara ate in silence as always, though she could feel the storm gathering around her. At the morning assembly, the head instructor addressed the cadets with an unusually sharp tone. He spoke of discipline, of trust, of the dangers of unchecked aggression within the ranks. His words were meant for everyone, but his eyes rested on her, and everyone noticed. Then came the announcement. Special trials were to be held that day, designed to test not just strength and skill but loyalty and control. The cadets buzzed with excitement and unease. Special trials were rare, grueling tests that stripped away weakness and left no room for excuses. For most, they were a dreaded challenge. For Ilara, they were a trap. She knew it as soon as her name was called first. The trial field was set in the old quarry behind the barracks, a place where rock walls rose high and jagged, casting shadows across the uneven ground. It was an arena of stone and dust, harsher than the controlled rings or wooded courses they were used to. The instructors lined the ridge above, watching closely, their clipboards ready. Ilara stood in the center, her figure dwarfed by the landscape. The head instructor's voice echoed against the stone. "Control is what separates a soldier from a beast. Today we test not your ability to fight, but your ability to fight within the limits of discipline. You will face multiple opponents. Excessive force will mean failure. Do you understand? Ilara raised her chin slightly, her calm voice carrying upward. Yes, instructor. The whistle blew, sharp and shrill, and 3 cadets rushed at her from different directions. She moved with fluid precision, sidestepping one, redirecting another's strike into his companion. Within seconds all 3 were on the ground, groaning but unharmed beyond bruises. She stepped back immediately, her hands open, showing restraint. The instructors murmured among themselves. Another wave came, for this time then 5. Each group she dispatched with the same efficiency, dropping them without inflicting lasting damage. Her movements were a balance of control and speed, a dance of precision that proved she was holding back her true force. For a moment, silence hung heavy as even the doubters were forced to admit she was no wild brawler. She was discipline incarnate. But the instructors were not satisfied. They wanted her to break. They sent more, wave after wave, until she was surrounded by 8 at once, all swinging, grappling, trying to overwhelm her. Dust rose around them as the fight exploded in chaos. Ilara's breath came heavier now, but her eyes remained steady, her body flowing through the storm. She ducked, struck, pivoted, her limbs moving like clockwork, each motion designed to end without excess. Cadets fell, staggered back, tried again, only to meet her calm ferocity. By the end, all 8 lay scattered in the quarry, panting and bruised, while she stood alone in the middle, sweat streaking her face but her composure unbroken. The ridge above was silent for a moment. Then the head instructor gave a curt nod, but his eyes were cold. Enough. She passes. The words were meant to end the trial, but they carried no praise, only reluctance. Ilara bowed her head slightly and walked from the field, her body aching but her spirit steady. She had proven control, proven discipline, proven she was no reckless fighter. Yet the looks that followed her back to the barracks told her the truth. Proof was not enough. Suspicion does not fade with evidence. It festers, waiting for the smallest excuse to grow again. That evening, while she sat alone on her bunk, one of the younger cadets approached nervously. He was thin, barely past boyhood, his hands trembling as he clutched his tray. Ilara, he whispered, glancing to make sure no one listened. Why do they hate you? You do everything right but they still look at you like you're dangerous. She looked at him, her calm gaze softening for the first time in days. Because I don't play their game, she answered simply. They measure worth with noise, with pride, with how loud you can shout your strength. I don't shout. That unsettles them. And when they test me I don't break. That frightens them more. The boy nodded slowly, not fully understanding, but comforted by the steadiness in her voice. Meanwhile, the 5 cadets who had started it all seethed in silence. The special trial had been their last hope of seeing her fail, and instead she had triumphed again in front of everyone. Their shame had transformed into something poisonous now, an obsession. If the instructors could not put her down they would. And in their bitterness, they began to plot not just humiliation but elimination. They whispered in shadows, away from curious ears, their voices filled with venom. Whatever happened next would not be a test of skill under rules or trials, it would be war in the dark where no whistle could save her. Ilara sensed it coming. She had lived too long with the instincts of survival not to feel danger circling her like wolves around a fire. That night, as the barracks grew quiet, she did not close her eyes. She sat upright, listening to the silence, waiting. She knew they would not rest until they struck again. And when they did, she would not only defend herself. She would end this. The night dragged on in a suffocating stillness. Ilara sat in the barracks, her posture rigid, her breathing steady, while around her the other cadets surrendered to restless dreams. The 5 were not among them. Their bunks lay empty, their absence unnoticed by most but not by her. She had known they would not wait long after the trial. Their humiliation had piled too high, their obsession now consuming every rational thought. They were wolves with nothing left but teeth and desperation, and wolves always strike at night. She closed her eyes not to sleep but to focus. Every sound became sharper, the creak of wood in the rafters, the rustle of blankets, the faint murmur of wind outside. And then she heard it, the soft scrape of boots against gravel, the muffled whisper of movement near the back entrance. They were here. She rose silently and slipped from her bunk, her bare feet making no sound on the cold floor. The night air greeted her as she stepped outside, the moon casting a pale glow across the yard. Shadows stretched long, shifting as the 5 emerged from the darkness, weapons glinting faintly in their hands. These were no training sticks now, they had stolen real blades from the armory. The leader stepped forward, his face twisted in grim resolve. This ends tonight, he said, his voice low but sharp as steel. You've shamed us for the last time. His companions spread out, circling her like predators. Ilara stood calm, her hands loose at her sides, her voice quiet but firm. You shame yourselves. You think strength is in numbers, in noise, in breaking rules. But strength is in control. Her words did nothing to slow them. Rage blinded them, pride drove them. The leader lunged first, blade flashing. She shifted aside, her hand snapping to his wrist, twisting sharply until the blade clattered to the ground. He cried out, staggering back, but the others closed in at once. The fight erupted in a flurry of steel and shadows. She moved like water, slipping between their strikes, redirecting their force, using their momentum against them. One swung wide and she ducked under, her palm driving into his ribs with a crack that sent him gasping to the dirt. Another came from behind, blade raised high, but she spun, her arm hooking his elbow, wrenching it until he screamed and dropped his weapon. She disarmed them one by one, never holding the blades, always letting them fall uselessly to the ground. Each strike was precise, controlled, meant to disable but not kill. Yet the ferocity of her movements, the speed of her counters, made it clear that if she had chosen otherwise, they would not have risen again. But they were relentless, driven by fury that dulled pain. Even when two lay groaning on the ground, the remaining three pressed harder, their swings wilder, more desperate. The leader, weaponless but enraged, charged her barehanded, trying to pin her arms. She caught him with a sharp knee to the stomach, then shoved him aside, her eyes flashing for the first time with something close to anger. They would not stop. They would never stop. She realized then that discipline alone would not be enough tonight. They needed to be broken, not just beaten but shattered in a way that left no doubt. Her strikes grew sharper, her counters swifter. She unleashed the full depth of her training, every motion honed from years of survival long before this academy. She moved faster than their eyes could follow, her body a storm of precision. One moment she was in front of them, the next behind, sweeping legs, striking throats, driving them down with inescapable force. Within minutes, all five were on the ground, writhing, groaning, clutching their injuries. Their weapons lay scattered in the dirt, glinting harmlessly under the moon. Ilara stood over them, her chest rising and falling, her eyes steady, her hands trembling only slightly from the restraint it had taken not to finish them entirely. The yard was silent save for their pained gasps. Then a voice rang out, a voice she had hoped would not be there. Enough. It was the head instructor, flanked by two others, stepping from the shadows where they had been watching. Ilara froze, realizing with a sinking heart that this had been no mere ambush. The instructors had known. Perhaps they had even allowed it, waiting to see what she would do when truly cornered. The head instructor's gaze swept over the groaning cadets, then fixed on her. His expression was unreadable, but his words cut sharp. So it is true. You are dangerous. Ilara did not flinch. She met his gaze, her voice quiet but unwavering. I defended myself. Nothing more. He stepped closer, his boots crunching on the gravel. You put 5 men on the ground with your bare hands. That is not defense, it is domination. Discipline is restraint, and restraint means knowing when to stop. Did you stop? His accusation hung heavy in the night. The 5 seized the chance, crying out with rehearsed pain, insisting she had attacked them, that she had snapped, that she had become a threat to everyone. Their lies spilled faster than their breath, feeding the doubt already seated in the instructors' minds. For the first time, Ilara felt the weight of injustice press harder than fists. No matter how cleanly she had fought, no matter how she had held back, the truth did not matter to those unwilling to see it. She stood in silence, knowing words would not change what they had already decided. The head instructor's voice came cold and final. At dawn you will face judgment. Until then you are confined. He gestured sharply and 2 guards stepped forward, weapons ready, though their eyes carried hesitation as they looked at her. She did not resist. With calm steps, she allowed herself to be escorted away, her shadow long in the moonlight. Behind her, the 5 smirked through their bruises, their victory not in battle but in deception. That night, in the cold confinement cell, Ilara sat alone, her body aching but her spirit unbroken. They had branded her dangerous, but she knew the truth. They feared her not because she had failed but because she had not. And when dawn came she would show them what true discipline meant, even under judgment, even when the world turned against her. Dawn broke with a thin red line across the horizon, painting the sky in shades of fire and ash. The air in the academy was colder than usual, though whether it was the morning chill or the tension that had gripped the camp, no one could say. Ilara stood in the confinement yard, her wrists bound with rope, though she had not resisted once since the night before. Her composure unsettled the guards. She did not tremble, did not frown, did not even avert her gaze. She simply waited, breathing steadily as though the ropes were nothing but cloth resting on her skin. The cadets gathered in the open square, murmuring to each other with restless energy. The 5 appeared among them, faces bandaged, their bodies stiff with exaggerated limps. Their wounds were real, but their performance was crafted to deepen the impression of victimhood. They played their roles perfectly, wincing under sympathetic pats on the back, glaring at Alara with hatred sharpened into triumph. When the head instructor appeared, silence fell like a hammer. His eyes scanned the crowd, then fixed on her, cold and heavy. "This academy is built on discipline, trust and unity," he began, his voice echoing across the yard. "When one threatens those pillars, it threatens us all." His words carried weight, not just as a judgment but as a lesson to the others. No one was above the system, not even the quiet woman who had bested them all. Alara was brought forward, her bare feet crunching on the gravel as she stood before the assembly. The ropes still bound her wrists, but she carried herself as though they did not exist. The instructor's gaze bore into her. "You have been accused of reckless violence, of threatening the lives of your comrades, of abandoning restraint. What do you say?" His voice was not asking for truth, it was demanding submission. She raised her chin, her voice clear and calm. "I did not attack them. They came to me with blades in the night. I defended myself, nothing more. I held back when I could have ended it." A murmur rippled through the cadets. Some nodded, believing her. Others scoffed, convinced by the sight of 5 broken men against one who stood unscathed. The head instructor let the silence stretch before responding. "Defense or not, you stand here as proof that you are dangerous. Restraint is not measured by what you claim, but by what others suffer in your presence. 5 men are injured because of you. How can we call that discipline?" His words struck like stones, deliberate, designed to frame her as the danger no matter the truth. She did not flinch. She met his gaze evenly. "Discipline is not letting your anger rule you. Discipline is knowing when to stop. They are alive because I chose restraint. If I had let go, they would not be standing here today." That answer stirred another murmur, sharper this time. The younger cadet who had spoken to her in the barracks before stepped forward hesitantly, his small voice breaking the tension. "She's telling the truth. I saw them leave the barracks last night. They weren't limping then. They went after her." The boy's words hung fragile in the air, but the 5 immediately snarled, shouting him down, calling him a liar, accusing him of being her pawn. The crowd split, some siding with the boy, others jeering him into silence. The instructors exchanged looks, their doubt visible now, but the head instructor silenced everyone with a raised hand. His voice dropped lower, more dangerous. "Then let her prove it. If she claims discipline, if she claims restraint, let us see it with our own eyes. She will face a final trial." The cadets whispered eagerly, sensing blood. The final trial was rarely invoked, a brutal test meant for only the most dangerous cases. Alara stood motionless as her ropes were cut. The head instructor pointed to the center of the training yard. "She will face opponents chosen by us. If she can demonstrate control, she will stay. If she cannot, she is finished." His tone carried no sympathy. It was not a fair chance. It was a spectacle, one last push to break her or prove her. The 5 smirked from their places, certain this time she would fall. The trial began almost immediately. 3 seasoned instructors stepped into the yard, their bodies hard with years of combat, their faces grim. This was no sparring match against untrained cadets. These were men who lived and breathed war, and their intent was not to coddle. The crowd grew silent as Alara faced them, unarmed, her figure dwarfed by their size. The whistle blew, sharp and final. They came at her with ruthless precision, not holding back as they struck with the force of professionals. The clash was brutal, faster than anything the cadets had seen. Alara's body moved like instinct itself, bending, twisting, striking back with precision. Every block rattled her bones, every counter required more focus than before. She slipped between them, redirecting strikes, landing blows sharp enough to stagger but not destroy. Her breath grew heavier, sweat dripping, but her eyes never wavered. She struck with control, never taking the easy path of ending them with lethal force, always pulling back at the last second. The cadets watched in stunned silence as she faced not 1, not 2, but 3 warriors at once, holding her ground with skill none of them could match. The fight dragged on until all 3 instructors were on one knee, panting, bruised, staring at her with something between shock and respect. Alara stood over them, chest heaving, her body battered but her control intact. She had not broken. She had not let rage rule her. She had proven restraint under the harshest trial yet. For a long moment the yard was silent. Then the head instructor spoke, his voice heavy, reluctant. "She passes." The words echoed, but they did not erase the doubt in his eyes. The cadets cheered or murmured, some in awe, some still suspicious. The 5 clenched their fists in frustration, their plan unraveling before them. Ilara bowed her head slightly, not in